Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very, very accomplished and senior professional from Dubai, United Arab Emirates, Mr. Ravi Sreenath. Ravi, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ashutosh.
Ravi, thank you. Ravi is the co-founder, managing director of Ripple Research, which is a data for good advisory firm. He's the founder of Accelerated Learning, which is an edtech social enterprise in Ethiopia. He was earlier with UBS Investment Bank in Zurich and the World Intellectual Property Organization in Geneva. So Ravi, let's start by asking you a question about your amazing journey from banking to intellectual property to data analytics. What have been some of your milestones and some of your learnings and challenges?
So I've always been curious about the world and eager to learn new things. And my career reflects this ethos. I've been quite fortunate, actually, to be involved with some really amazing organizations over the last 17 years in a variety of roles with the private sector, public sector, and also as a social entrepreneur. And I've lived and worked in about 7 countries in Asia, Europe, and Africa. My last 12 years in Ethiopia and East Africa have been, for me, the most challenging, but also the most rewarding and memorable as well. Somehow I've managed to find myself at pivotal moments in each of these industries. For example, I landed in investment banking just before the financial crisis.
Okay.
I moved to Kenya just as the wave of social enterprises was starting. And I was in Ethiopia at the beginning of its economic growth story. And now I'm working in data science in the middle of a AI revolution.
Fascinating. So let's talk about Ripple Research. You say that Ripple Research works at the intersection of data science, behavior change, and social impact. Help me understand what you do.
So the idea for Ripple Research started in the middle of the height of the pandemic. In 2020, I think we can remember, even though we can try not to remember.
Correct.
I think it's a very confusing time. My co-founder and I started brainstorming about the concept of Ripple Research around this time, in the middle of COVID lockdowns. Everybody was getting on Zoom calls, so me and him connected, and we were discussing various ideas. So just to give a quick flashback of what happened and bring us, set some stage to this conversation. The world had suddenly become quite confusing for all of us. There were a lot of questions, but there were very few answers.
Correct.
And we were all trying to figure out what is going on and how to answer these questions. So our founding team, like everyone else, was figuring out ways to make sense of all of these radical changes. So all of these factors gave rise to the idea of Ripple Research, and we later started Ripple Research. So we use data science techniques to study and understand human behavior. So every day, millions of us go online and share our wants, our needs, desires, fears, and hopes and dreams as well, publicly and willingly on various social channels or even online digital media channels. This public data gives us a wealth of insights to gain an in-depth understanding of very complex issues. These issues could be, right now we are working on issues that are global. These could be climate anxiety, for example, as a result of ongoing climate change, or online misinformation, even polarization and division of societies, and many others as well. So these are the areas that we like to get involved. But our approach is to first listen, understand, rather than act. So we want to gain a deep understanding of what people are saying and try to understand their perceptions and their views before we design a solution or a product.
Very interesting. And for my viewers and listeners, Ravi, help me understand what is the definition of big data?
So we can start by looking at what is regular data.
Correct.
So normal data sets are not big in the sense that we usually have hundreds of records or thousands of records or so on. Big data sets, as a contrast, have millions of records or data points or billions of data points. For example, Google, across its online systems and platforms, could track user interactions and user behavior and collect data on billions of data points every day. Similarly, I think all of these other data sources, like climate data points around the world, changing temperature, pressure, wind patterns, all of these predictive models rely on these big data sets.
Hmm.
So these are essentially very, very large databases across a range of industries. You can pick and choose which ones you want to work with, but essentially that's what fundamentally.
Very interesting. And you're also using big data to identify, understand, and solve societal problems like hate speech, climate anxiety, and health misinformation. Help me understand all of these with some examples.
Yeah, definitely. So I think, like I said earlier, our main source of data that we are looking at is the publicly available social conversations or interactions people are having. The idea when we started Ripple Research stemmed from the place where we said, why is it that nobody's able to figure out or could predict a pandemic like this? And why were there no measures in place? Why was there no predictive models that could predict results of presidential elections very well? Why was there a big surprise in many different parts of the world when something happened that a lot of other people did not think it was a surprise for them? It was the natural course of events, but a big percentage of the population could not understand these questions. And we realized there were quite a few problems with existing data collection methods, whether they be surveys, polling, focus group discussions, all of this, because there's inherent bias in surveys, right? So there are kinds of surveyor biases that can be built into the questionnaire, responders bias as well. The very fact that somebody is asking you a question can change the answer. So we wanted to see how could we overcome this. So the solution that we came up with was trying to access unprompted data. Unprompted data is data that people just share without responding to an external stimulus or a question or a surveyor. And this is just a stream of consciousness. This shows the lived experience of people as they live it and as they share it. So this is a very rich data set that if we can channel it and harness it and try to mine some insights out of it, can give us amazing solutions. Give a very practical example. We do quite a bit of work with global health agencies like WHO and CDC. And WHO, I think even during the middle of the COVID pandemic, coined a new term called the infodemic. So they define infodemic as a large volume of information, which has both aspects, both misleading information and factual information.
Right.
Basically an information overload. It's so much information, nobody can keep track of the sources, of the volume, which is right, it's wrong. So we try to figure out a way to harness it, to try to build it into a data model that can give us the negative aspects of it, the positive aspects of it, and how people are reacting to it. So based on this understanding, you can develop some antidotes or interventions, public health interventions. So if there is a particular misinformation about masks, you know what are the societal barriers for mask adoption or vaccine hesitancy or what have you. So then you can start either a debunking process or a new process now that's gaining a lot of steam and recognition called pre-bunking. So the aim is not to eliminate misinformation, because misinformation has been with us as long as communication has been with us.
Correct.
The aim is to build immunity towards misinformation.
And when you talk of, being able to manage problems like, say, hate speech, what happens? I mean, is it that your technology is able to monitor conversations or listen to conversations and then determine where some specific words are being used, or how does it work?
So, I mean, we call ourselves a human plus AI, or a high touch meets high tech approach. You can't just give it all to the AI algorithms or the technology to take care of it, because there's a lot of nuance is needed. And I think, as all of us are aware, social sciences are rarely simple. These are actually complex adaptive systems. And for that, we need quite a bit of manual intervention. But the technology helps us automate this process, helps us do this more efficiently than slogging through thousands of data points or billions of points even. So this is the approach that we take. Obviously, there are nuances like cultural nuances, localization nuances. Just in the context of hate speech in the US has a completely different flavor to hate speech, for example, in India. Or even climate change concerns in Australia are extremely different from Sudan or South America. So trying to understand, our team is quite diverse and multicultural and come from a variety of backgrounds and countries.
Mm.
So this brings us also a way to understand what is going on in a much more nuanced way.
Mm.
And
sorry, go ahead.
No, I mean, all of this begins with first understanding what is happening,
correct,
rather than addressing it. So
correct. And when you speak of, say, climate anxiety, there is climate anxiety across the whole world. Are you also able to determine which are the hotspots for climate anxiety? And if yes, what kind of action can be taken with this data?
This is an amazing question. Thanks for asking this. And this is a topic that's very close to my heart. It's a very important topic. Actually, there's quite a bit of research that says it's the fastest growing mental health condition right now among the younger population, especially among teenage and adolescent groups across the world, as you noted. But it takes on slightly different dimensions based on geographies. So we can definitely identify hotspots around the world. But for us, even preliminary discussion, what needed to happen was, what do we mean by climate anxiety? Because somehow these words take on catch-all meaning that can mean different people. So our first investigation was into unpacking climate anxiety. Because climate anxiety, then we realized it's not one thing, it's many different things. And it's related to many other things like economy and jobs and future outlook and so on and so on. So and these individual concerns and differences are fascinating to observe across geographies.
So, go ahead, please.
Please continue.
So my question to you, Ravi, is that in the three areas that you've spoken about, which is hate speech, climate anxiety, and health misinformation, what kind of steps can government and society take to manage these? And where does accountability lie?
Accountability lies with all of us. Assuming that we are all in a democracy and we all have some agency and we all have some motivation. So the way we advocate for things is you need at least two factors for change to happen. One is the ability to make the change happen. The other one is the motivation to give you an incentive to make the change. And governments are taking action. I mean, we can be impatient. We can be a little bit critical or appreciative of certain government measures, but there are measures being put in place. There are quite a few government agencies now being set up just to combat disinformation and misinformation, for example. And there's been a lot of talks about climate change and so on. But it has to start with each and every one of us. And we can make individual actions. I think the biggest, I would say, a fallacy or kind of a misinformation is that climate action cannot be done at an individual level, because look at large companies, oil companies, or plastic polluters that are doing so much that me saving or recycling a bottle is not going to make a difference, but actually it does. And if all of us collectively do it, the collective action is always going to be great.
Yeah, well said. Thank you. Great response. When it comes to governments, will legislation help in being able to expedite this, or will it be an awareness within every citizen, or a combination of both, I would imagine?
It's definitely the combination of both, right? So the awareness is going to give you the capability or the ability to make change, and the legislation is going to hopefully give you an incentive to make the change, or create the enabling environment, or even in some cases fund some innovative ideas, or provide some grants or some incentives even for the private sector to be involved in. So I think it has to be a mix of both. But again, we can't just wait for change to happen. I think we are in a time where we all should be impatient for change, especially around these critical areas.
I was reading an article which said that the awareness of climate change and a whole lot of other misinformation and things that are going around is much higher amongst the millennials and the Gen Zs and the younger people. Is that your perspective also?
I mean, it's hard to just generalize in very broad strokes, because again, I would say, I feel like I'm repeating myself, but Gen Z is a construct in some areas, and the same demographic characteristics do not apply.
Correct.
Gen Z in North America is completely different from that age demographic in South America. But what cannot be denied is the increased use of internet technologies, or even saying you don't need to remember because you have a second brain in Google, or you don't need to memorize things because you can pull them up at any point in time. But all of this information, just-in-time information, also gives you just-in-time misinformation.
Well said.
And you need to have some fundamental principles in place to assess the quality of information being presented to you.
Well said. The other question, Ravi, that is often asked about so much data being available about each one of us is the entire issue of privacy. How are you tackling this particular challenge, which is becoming bigger and bigger now with ChatGPT seems to know everything about everything, or each one of us? How are you tackling, as such a major data organization, the matters of questions of privacy?
We take it extremely seriously. For us, it's the most important thing. And that's why actually we've even located Ripple Research in Switzerland, which has one of the most highest and stringent regulations on data privacy issues. We have a very strong code of conduct. All of that goes even without saying. For us, that's the starting point where we start from. But beyond that, as you say, yes, there is so much data out there, but also this is willingly and publicly put out there.
Correct.
And we don't, for example, ourselves at Ripple Research don't have access to somebody's WhatsApp chats or private groups or anything that happens behind encrypted sources and stuff. We have no idea. Whatever is willingly shared outside is what we can access.
But it's a public domain.
I myself am extremely concerned and use multiple layers of privacy protection and security measures in place. Just my even regular normal browsing on my phone or my computer. But it's a major issue, and I think it's one of those issues as well where we need to be critical of: should we really need to share so much information? Is it really worth putting it out there?
Yeah, well said. So Ravi, now let's move to your social enterprise, which is accelerated learning in Ethiopia. And my first question would have been, why Ethiopia? But I think you answered it in your introduction, saying you spent 8 years in Ethiopia. But tell me a little bit more about what you're doing through accelerated learning in Ethiopia.
So my time in Ethiopia, the early part of my time in Ethiopia was spent consulting for and working with government agencies to transition Ethiopia into a market-based economy. So there was a big transition happening, and I was an advisor to various government agencies and bodies there to make this transition. Through this transition period, Ethiopia recorded record-breaking growth rates. I think it was double-digit growth rates for a decade or something, and so on. There was a lot of progress being made. But one thing that still remained, for me at least, the point that literally shined a light is a lack of education. So like how education is like the most fundamental thing that brings about other changes on top of it. So it's like it has a multiplier effect. So even with basic information processing abilities, you can still be a better farmer. Even with basic information abilities, you can take better medication. So education happens to be, for me at least, the basic building block of an economy. And Ethiopia was so early stage in its development. These systems were not in place. And whatever systems that were there needed quite a bit of improvement and upgrading to help the country along with its journey. So that was my call it aha moment or a big insight for me. And I've always been never considered myself to be an entrepreneur. It was always never, that was never my thing. But sometimes a problem speaks to you and is so compelling that you have no other choice but jump on it and do it. So this education aspect in Ethiopia was one of those things that I really had to solve, and I couldn't do anything else apart from that at that particular time.
Amazing. And what are some of the challenges of education that you are addressing in Ethiopia through your foundation?
So quite a few. I mean, we call ourselves problem specific, solution agnostic. So we are extremely focused on the problem, on how to solve the problem. And the solutions may vary over time as technology develops or systems change or government practices develop and so on. So the one problem that we were very, very committed to is rescuing teachers and students from boring and scary classrooms. Because that's where all the learning happens. And if any part of this transaction doesn't go well, it has a big telescopic effect down the line.
Correct.
And classrooms, I think, even right now, like I'm very scared to go to a classroom or even my own school days. So we want to make this a pleasant experience for teachers and students. So this involves bringing in active learning strategies to the classroom, moving away from the traditional chalk and talk method of teaching, away from the blackboard, more into participative and interactive learning sessions and so on, and building creativity and critical thinking skills among students.
Amazing.
So we've, I think, impacted about 60,000 students and with about 3,000 teachers. We've set up multiple year-long coaching programs for them. So it's not just one-shot trainings, but actual handholding over a 2 or 3 year period.
Amazing, amazing. So I have time for just one more question, Ravi, and this is for the many, many people who will listen to our conversation. Based on your own amazing journey, and you seem to have done so many different things, and as in your own words, you seem to have been in the right place at the right time. What would you say are 3 lessons you would want our viewers and listeners to take away from your own journey and from our conversation?
That's a very good question. Actually made me think quite a bit as well on this. I would say the first one, just going back to my own journey, I would strongly encourage anybody to stay curious and learn as much as possible. The world around us is so rich and full of experiences and opportunities to learn. I think we should grab it with both hands. And I would encourage anybody to also take the lead to pursue non-traditional career paths. There are so many opportunities out there right now. What is needed is willingness and ability. So hiring processes are changing. So I think it's all about being, again, putting yourself in the right place at the right time and being willing to do the work. Number 2, I would say, be very intentional about your thoughts and actions, as they can have ripple effects way beyond our immediate circles. Anything we say or share can be magnified and amplified with power of internet technologies. And just as a follow-on to this point, I would also say, let's all try to continue to apply critical thinking and try to assess the quality of the information being presented to us. And be very intentional in that as well, and trying to not take anything at its face value.
Very interesting. And on that note, Ravi, and your amazing lessons, stay curious and learn. Don't ever hesitate to pursue non-traditional career paths. It's like, the next one you mentioned was be well-intentioned about your thoughts and actions and apply critical thinking. Thank you so much for speaking to me about your journey, about Ripple Research, and how amazingly you have created such a powerful data for good advisory firm in such a short period of time. Thank you also for talking to me about so many different aspects of data analytics. Thank you for speaking to me about all the great work you're doing in Ethiopia, supporting so many students and so many teachers through accelerated learning. Thank you again, and good luck.
Thank you, Ashutosh. Thanks for the opportunity to connect with you and your audience.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website, www.tbcy.in, to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.